its own, we're going to record, each holding its own purpose. Okay. So as the insurer, another misconception, as the insurer, we are unable to provide advice on which tenancies to choose, or pretty much advise anyone on the one to use. And that's because it's considered legal advice, and we're not attorneys. So if your clients had questions on how they should hold title, we can show them their options, but cannot advise them on which one they should choose. That is for a property attorney to talk to them about, because each one has different implications, tax purposes, for any purposes in life. So really a real estate attorney should advise as tenancy. Search and exam, my favorite part. I know I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to this, but it's the behind the scenes crew that takes all of the puzzle pieces of this property and puts it all together. So what happens is the abstractor at our company turns around and they utilize certain databases, certain county records like the Register of Deeds, and they go back 40, 50 years on these properties, and they compile all of the deeds that have been recorded, any open liens on the property, any title defects, any easements, any type of things that would affect the chain of title on the property. They gather all of that information, tax information. We even run, the owner's names to make sure that there's no tax liens, bankruptcies, divorces, any of that good stuff. So the abstractor is responsible for search and exam. They go and they pull all the puzzle pieces out and they put them all in a bow, and then they hand it off to the exam team. Now, the exam team's job is to take all of those puzzle pieces and fit them together. If they don't fit together correctly, you see requirements on your commitment. So that means things need to be done to cure any of the defects in the chain. A couple examples of that could be an open mortgage, could be that there's a decedent's estate and title. So we're going to need to see letters of authority from the probate court. Any number of things. That examiner is going to take all of those puzzle pieces, fit them all together, and then decide what needs to happen going forward to get us to the closing table. You can keep on one more. Okay. Thank you. Title insurance. Here's one of my favorite things about title insurance. And then I'm going to talk to you about the commitment and what it stands for and what it includes. The general title insurance concepts is title insurance is a form of insurance that differs from other forms of insurance. Most forms of insurance assume risks which arise out of future events that we can't see or determine when will happen, such as an accident, damage from a hurricane, and those types of things. What makes title insurance really unique is that we insure the past. So we're looking at the past history of that property, and we're deciding if everything was done properly and if anything needs to be done to make it perfect in the chain of title. So title insurance insures the past. Most insurance companies insure future events that we don't know when or where will happen. All right, the title commitment. So this is fun. This is what you guys get after the exam team is completed putting their puzzle pieces together. On Schedule A, if you want to flip to the next one.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. On Schedule A, which is the first page of your commitment, you're going to see the effective date. The effective date is what the date at the county register of deeds is current to. And what that means is all the documents that are sent to the register of deeds and are sent for recording, the county certifies that they have recorded and put on record all the documents up to a certain date. The title company has no choice on that effective date. We have to go by each county's register of deeds as to what they are certified through. The next is your proposed insured. On an owner's policy, that would be the buyers. On a lender's policy, that would be the bank or the lending institution. The next thing you'll see on that Schedule A is the record title holder. That is who the examiner has established by reviewing all of the deeds in the chain of title, who has fee simple interest to the property. The last thing on Schedule A is a legal description. Very important. This is the property that we are insuring. So this is the property that the bank or the lender is either putting a lien against or is being transferred or sold. So very important legal description. The next page of your commitment is called Schedule B. Schedule B is the requirements. This is what our homework is, right? This is the homework we need to do to get us to the closing table. We have to look through all the requirements and decide what needs to be done. Our requirements at Titleocity are a little bit unique. We've changed the wording to them to be more clear and to the point. So like if we have a mortgage that we want released, that requirement literally says record release of mortgage and gives you the mortgage information. If we need, let's say somebody's going through a divorce and we want to see the judgment of divorce, that requirement specifically says submit copy of judgment of divorce between, and it gives you the party names. So requirements page, super important. Always take a look at that because those are the things that we're going to need to do to get us to the closing table. The third page of the commitment is Schedule B2, exceptions. These are exceptions to coverage. And they're pretty standard. The exceptions to coverage are usually anything on the property that cannot be cured. So what I mean by that is, say Detroit Edison ran an electric line over the property. Well, we as a title company aren't going to come in and say you have to move your Edison line for us to insure this. We're going to show that Edison exception on the commitment, and then it's going to transfer over to the policy. So usually on Schedule B2 exceptions, you're going to see easements, private roads, public road access. You're going to see any building and use restrictions, things that we can't change. One example is, newer subdivision, they might, in their building and use restrictions, they might say that you're not allowed to keep your, 60-foot RV in the driveway because they want to keep the subdivision aesthetically pleasing. That's not something that title company can do anything about. We're going to put that as an exception to coverage because it's an established thing for an entire subdivision. So in a nutshell, that is your commitment: Schedule A, Schedule B, and Schedule B2. So we always say A, important, B, requirements, and B2, exceptions. So on the requirements page, we already touched a little bit of base on this, eliminating the title defects. The requirement page is going to show you everything that needs to be done up until closing to get us to the closing table. And at that point, the commitment is now complete and it's submitted over to our escrow processing team. Our escrow processors then read over, take notes on, and reach out to all of our clients. And that could include real estate agents, loan officers, attorneys. And if, permission is granted, we do reach out to sellers and buyers as well. If the agents, give us permission to do that, we will help them out, and kind of talk directly to them. So there's no breakdown in communication and all parties are in the loop as to what needs to be done and how. So our escrow processors are super trained in how to cure those things on the requirements. And they will reach out and let you know what we need or how they are going to help you in clearing the requirements seen on the commitment. So at this point, the title department is handed off to the escrow processing team. And this is our fabulous process wheel. And I mean, we all speak volumes about this process wheel. It really gives you clear and concise timeline of how a transaction occurs and what it has to go through. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Madden, who's going to go over the process wheel and take it from here.
Thank you, Christine. And I just want to mention, I said this yesterday too, but I think that the title aspect of it, the title search and the title examination are kind of the underrated, unsung heroes of our industry, because as a real estate agent or a loan officer, you really don't get involved, or things don't really start moving that you're aware of until we have a purchase agreement or until we're getting ready to close, where it's just so important, the work that the abstracting and exam teams do here. The reason why our policy is valuable is because the time and care and consideration that they take to research all of those deeds, to research all of those liens, and make sure that we are, presenting all the requirements that are necessary to ensure marketable titles. So big shout out to Christine and her team, because they just don't get a lot of the recognition. They're kind of behind the scenes, take a peek behind the curtain kind of a thing. So from this point on the wheel, we'll start at the 12 o'clock hour. We've received the purchase agreement. Great news, we're under contract. Once you send that purchase agreement over to Titleocity, the search and review gets done by the title abstracting and exam team. And then once that commitment is produced, the processor is going to do what we call a send out. They're going to send that commitment to you. And even though those requirements are, written in basic language, sometimes a commitment can be a little bit difficult to read. So what the processor does is they'll do a send out, and they'll actually just kind of break down into layman's terms and just kind of break down to say, here is exactly what we need. We need either a payoff authorization for an open mortgage or multiple open mortgages. We might need contact information for a homeowners association. There may be name liens, common name liens sometimes that may not be your client, that we still have to find a way to resolve and prove that it is not for your clients. So for example, for a common name, we might be asking for the last 4 digits of a social security number or some other proof or documentation to prove that that lien showing in public record is not actually attaching to your seller or your buyer. So once the processor has worked with either you or your client to gather all of the information necessary to clear title on the seller side, we're pretty much good to go with any seller requirements. And at that point, we're waiting on the lender to give those favorite words, clear to close. I think everybody's favorite words, clear to close, past inspection, there's certain ones, scheduled closing. So once we're clear to close with the lender, then we can start working on those closing documents. And I'm sure you're all aware and you've all seen them, we will send out the closing statements, the Alta closing statements for review. And it's not to say that you have to, scrutinize this document with a fine-tooth comb, but it is a good idea to just double check a few things. Oftentimes at the title company, we get to this stage in the game and we send out the statements and we hear back from the agent, oh, whoops, there's a sales price addendum that you guys didn't get, or occupancy has changed. Maybe in the initial contract, there was an agreement for a per diem for a 30-day occupancy, and perhaps along the way, the sellers have decided that they're going to go ahead and be able to give keys at closing. Oftentimes, we don't really get that information. There's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts. So just take a peek, make sure your commission's correct, make sure your compliance fee is there. Again, if there's been a change with occupancy or a change with something, just kind of take a peek. If you have any questions on those statements that come out, you can always call the person who sent them to you, which would be our escrow officer, and they'll be able to kind of walk you through any of those things. So once the statement has gone out, I should say this, once the lender gives clear to close and we are ready to go, then the processor who you've been working with for the life of your file since the purchase agreement came in, might be 30 days, 45 days, depending on, maybe a couple of weeks, cash deal, mortgage deal. That processor that you're used to working with is going to pass on the file once it's scheduled to an escrow officer. And it's worth mentioning that escrow officer is actually a real designation at a title company. It means that you are licensed and insured to produce title in the state of Michigan. We actually have all of our escrow officers and all of our processors licensed because we think that is something valuable to have, not only to them for their life and career, but for us, that we can make sure that all of our escrow staff are licensed. So that escrow officer is going to produce the statements, send those out for review. They're also going to draft the real estate package. So the whole real estate package is going to be drafted, the warranty deed, the bill of sale, the owner's affidavit, any escrow documents, escrow agreements for anything we might be holding, water, occupancy, damage, etc. So that's all going to be sent out for review. And then if we're working on the lender side, if we're insuring the loan policy and perhaps working with one of your buyers, then that escrow officer is going to work with the lender to get an approved CD. So the lender is going to send us closing instructions, and the escrow officer is going to prepare the closing disclosure and send that to the lender for approval. Very okay. So once that lender approves the closing disclosure, just know that it is their responsibility. I'm so sorry, you guys. It is technically the lender's responsibility to share that closing disclosure with your client, and also let them know what that final amount to close is going to be, right? So we, of course, are always more than willing to share that number with your client and kind of go over it if they would like. But just know that I think it's a common misconception that the title company is the one to contact the buyer and give them that number. There's been a few times recently in the last couple of weeks where we've had a little bit of confusion on that, and I'm not sure why, but just know that it's technically the lender's responsibility to share that information with the buyer client. So once the closing disclosure has been approved, and that's not always immediate. Sometimes that takes a little bit of time. We may send a closing disclosure based on everything that the lender has provided us on those closing instructions. And the lender oftentimes still has changes they want to make. They might be making changes to that initial escrow deposit. They might be making changes to, an aggregate adjustment or something to stay within what they originally quoted. Also, there's minimum investments, for buyers that the lender wants to see. So they may be reducing a concession or something just to kind of stay within the guidelines. Once that CD has been approved, then the lender is going to send us the entire closing package. And at that point, we're ready to go to the table, which is great news. Hopefully everybody is together, not so much anymore, but everybody sits down, everyone signs, and we're done for the most part. At that point, there still could be some things that need to happen before we're able to disperse that file. So some lenders require lender funding approval, and some don't. So if you're at the table and the lender that you're working with or the buyer's working with requires funding approval, then that might take a little bit longer to get everything kind of wrapped up so that we're in a position to give packages and give checks out and proceeds and all of that. So once funding approval has been provided, then we're ready to leave the table and everything's good to go. Everyone shakes hands, keys get exchanged, everybody's happy, start moving in, congratulations all around. At that point, the title company is still not done. We will take that file back to our office and we will disperse that file. Sometimes it's called wrapping a file, sometimes it's called killing it out, killing a file, which sounds a bit aggressive, but it's just the way we've always called it. We'll break that whole file down. We'll scan everything in that we need. We'll make note of the documents that need to be recorded. And then we will disperse all of the checks associated with that file that weren't given at the table, home warranties, things like that. So we'll submit everything for recording. And then once everything has been recorded, typically would be the time that we're ready to issue final policy. We at Titleocity have made some changes recently to how we issue final policy. And final policy is kind of when we come, back around the horn to the title department, because final policies are issued by our title department. So I'm going to give it back over to Christine, and she can kind of explain about final policy and then talk a little bit about how we've made some changes that we think benefit the client.
Thank you. So when we used to issue short form loan policies at the table. We're still doing that. The difference is the owner's policies would go out probably 3, 4, or 5 months after closing. Now they're being issued at closing, at the table is what we call it. Super helpful because, most of us, when we're buying a house, we're all in boxes and, the closing's done and we're moving on, we're decorating, changing things around. And all of a sudden, 3 months later, something comes in the mail and you're like, what is this? Right? Well, now it's going to go right in with your closing documents, stay nice and tidy. Everything's going to be in one spot. Definitely benefits the clients, benefits everybody involved because here's the policy. It's done. It's wrapped up and you're good to go. So what we do when we issue the final policy is we make sure we verify that all the requirements were fulfilled on our commitment, that we've sent all the necessary documents for recording. And then we go ahead and we issue the final policy to the client. Now, an owner's policy will insure the buyer. A mortgage policy will insure the bank or lending institution. So in a nutshell, huge benefit to, being able to do it now at closing. And it's a very good thing.
Amanda, I'm going to take you back to talk about Qualia, one of the systems that we offer at Titleocity, and how awesome it is, if you wouldn't mind doing that.
Yeah,
please.
absolutely. So we just rolled out this new platform for title insurance. This is actually the most advanced, most technologically advanced and secure title insurance platform in the country. And it's a web-based platform, and it just really allows for a lot of really neat things on the agent side. So if you haven't already learned about Qualia Connect, that is the agent platform and portal for access to all of your files. And when I say all of your files, that means whether or not you have, say, 3 files with Titleocity, and perhaps you have a cash buyer that's working with a different company and they also happen to use Qualia, you will see every single file that you're associated with on this one platform. What's really neat about this is that it gives you kind of a progress bar at the top there, that green bar that lets you know the file's been opened. It lets you know when it's in the title process. It also lets you know once it's kind of in what we call closing prep, meaning we're getting ready to close. And then the post-closing, as well, it'll tell you once it's closed. From here, you can take a look at requests that are coming in from the title company. You can also look at what outstanding tasks your buyer or seller might have. And then you can also share securely documents with the title company as well as your client. So this has been an incredible tool. Christine and I worked on rolling this out for about 6 months. And we took a lot of care and consideration in how we were setting the system up to be most beneficial for our clients and also for your clients. So we could not be more proud of the way this turned out. And I really just encourage you guys to go on and check it out. If you want, we could even jump on a Zoom together and kind of walk through it together and do a one-on-one kind of training if you felt that beneficial. You can get a quote from this platform. You can also submit an order for title from this platform. So just a lot of really cool tools, and just a way to have kind of all of the parties to that file, all their contact information, all in one place. You can email from here. You can also share access. So if you have, say, a transaction coordinator that you're working with on a particular file, and you want to share access to that file, that right within Qualia Connect as well. So just a huge amount of benefits. Can't say enough about, and we're finding that a lot of Michigan title companies are kind of switching over to Qualia. Frankly, there's just no other platform that is doing what they're doing and kind of integrating, bringing all parties, together and kind of that connection. So they're definitely leading the way. So it's really impressive. I really encourage you guys to reach out to Dawn or Sarah if you'd like to set something up. We could either come to your office and meet you, or we could do something via Zoom, or even just supply some additional, so you could, involved in it, get logged in and learn a little bit more on your own.
Something I just want to touch on really quickly, very cool that we have at our company is a couple of these apps here that you see to help streamline and just make everything a little bit quicker and easier for everybody. So Amanda did already talk about Qualia in the bottom left corner. I do want to touch on the Zachem app. That is an EMD app that you can literally just take a picture of your check with your phone, and it sends securely right into our account. Any buyers that want to deposit their EMT, if Titleocity is holding it. So it's very cool. I like to describe it as, like you're taking, you're making a deposit in your bank account. It's the same thing. You take a picture of the front, picture of the back. And when I played with it, it sent into our account within 6 minutes. So it was pretty cool. Something that was brought back is the title capture app. In Qualia, you can do seller net sheets as well and order directly from there, but also we do offer the title capture app that's easy on the road. You can change numbers around and figures. So that's something that's really nice that we do offer to our customers as well. So we try and make it as easy as we can for you, including, you know, like the ladies said earlier, our processors send out step-by-step, hey, this is what you need to do to clear. So again, we try and make it as easy as possible and hope that everybody, you know, likes the steps that we take, because that's what we're here for. We're here to serve our clients and make it easier for everybody. Make sure that you follow us on, take a little picture with your phone right now on Facebook, Insta, YouTube. We are constantly uploading things, you know, valuable resources, things like that. So stay in touch with us. And then along with the thank yous, we would like to open it up if anybody has any questions, any burning title questions that you might have. We know that you think about it all the time. So anything that you have, we have our experts on to answer any of your questions. So I didn't see anything in the chat box as far as questions go, other than a PDF of all the ways to hold title. And yes, we can definitely send something out in regard to that as well. And basically the slide that we had in there.
I do have a question. I have a listing coming up that has a Ladybird title. Can you tell me how that works?
Sure. All right. That's my favorite deed in the whole wide world. First of all, let me say that. You know, a little bit of backstory, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was common practice. Like, I'm going to use the scenario of my parents. Like, say my parents were in failing health and they own their own home. It was common practice to execute a, you know, quick claim deed and keep it in a lockbox, right? Not send it to the county register of deeds. Well, we run into problems then, because from an underwriter point of view, I'm going to look at that deed as being recorded after the people that executed died. So from an underwriting standpoint, I can't establish it was their true intent to transfer that property because they didn't record it during their lifetime. So we were running into that a whole bunch. So now we have the Ladybird Deed. The Ladybird Deed should eliminate any of those problems. So what a Ladybird Deed does, and I'm going to use myself as an example. I own my home, right? In the event that something happens to me, I want to make sure that my home goes to my son, okay? And I'm going to deed on this Ladybird Deed from myself to myself. And then I'm going to retain the power to convey, sell, mortgage the property during my lifetime. It's called an inter vivos power to convey. A Ladybird Deed includes that. So during my lifetime, the property is mine and I can do whatever I want with it. And this deed is recorded right away, okay? When something happens to me, the deed immediately transfers to what we call the remainderment, which would be the person named on there, my son, or even like some people name a trust or an entity. Whoever you left it to on that deed, say in the event of my death, my interest shall transfer to, we call that the remainderment. So what you would need to do in the event is record my death certificate, and now title is solely vested in my son. This avoided probate. This avoided anybody in my family contesting my wishes. And my son, that's not to say they can't contest my wishes, they can, but my wishes are stated pretty clear. In the event of my death, this property is transferred to my son to do with as he pleases. So it eliminates all of those problems that we used to come across prior. I love the Ladybird. Now,
I have a question. Is a title company allowed to prepare a Ladybird Deed?
that was my next thing that I was going to say. Great question. Title companies are unable to prepare a Ladybird Deed. And it goes back to what I was talking about before. When preparing such a deed, it can be construed as legal advice. We are not attorneys. Although we have legal backgrounds on property law, they are limited to insurability. That's where we our expertise comes in. So as a title company, we are unable to prepare a Ladybird deed. We can refer you to an attorney that can do that. We also can't, I can tell you like what I just told you now, I can tell you what a Ladybird deed is, what it does, what it means, but I can't advise you. As in, well, what if I leave it to this person? Well, if I left it to this person, what would happen? I can't go in depth on record for those types of things. So good question. I love the Ladybird deed. It really, it really is. It's helpful to everyone, because you're not keeping a deed. I'm going to give you an example. I just had one not too long ago. They had a quitclaim deed in the lockbox. The quitclaim deed was executed and signed in 2012. Okay. So mom and dad died since then. And so one of the children, brought this deed and recorded it. And now it's recorded. I see that mom and dad, their dates of death, and this deed has been recorded after they died. So I look at it and I said, this deed is dated, 10 years ago. Mom and dad didn't record it during their lifetime. What's to say that they didn't change their mind and want to leave it to another child or multiple children or not to the children at all, right? So I can't establish that that deed is valid because it was recorded after mom and dad's death and it was dated from so long ago. A Ladybird deed would have completely avoided this scenario. In 2012, if the Ladybird deed existed and mom and dad had done a Ladybird deed from mom and dad to mom and dad with the power, reserving their inter vivos power, and then, to Timmy, their son, as the remainder man, and recorded it in 2012, I wouldn't have any questions. They recorded it during their lifetime. They clearly established intent. It's on public record, which gives constructive notice. Constructive notice is super important in our line of work. Any unrecorded documents are not technically considered valid until they're recorded, which means that constructive notice has been provided, which means public record. So does that answer your question? In a little bit of too much detail, probably?
No.
I just like it so much.
Actually, so personally, my in-laws have a deed that they want to be recorded upon their passing. And I went, because I'm in title, so the first time they gave it to me, I'm like, what is this? But I'm not going to question them because they're my in-laws, So now I might have a conversation with them this week. I'm like, you might want to consider a Ladybird deed instead.
Yeah, Ladybird Deed's the best. Or have them execute and have notarized an affidavit to go along with that deed. But that's a sidebar conversation.
So to kind of piggyback on that, when you have a Ladybird deed and they put it into a trust, and when it goes into the trust, is it in, how do the agents know when it's attached to the social security number of the deceased or if the trust has an EIN? Because that becomes a problem at the title company or at the closing, excuse me, when you get there and the check is payable to the trust and we need an EIN number or social security number for the 1099. And everybody's saying, well, I didn't know I needed that. What is that? Do I get it? When was that prepared? Is that something that you can maybe shed a little bit of light on for the agents, how to tell which one they need?
Yes. So that's something that we are actually actively working on, trying to educate and just give information, provide information to our agents in the very beginning. As soon as we are getting a commitment that says there's a trust, an estate, or an LLC in title, we're really trying to make sure that we're reaching out to the agent right away, saying, hey, if you have an estate or a trust or an LLC, you're going to need to understand that proceeds check is going to have to be made in the name of the trust, the estate, or the LLC, and you're going to need a tax identification number. The only kind of exception to that rule would be if I'm a sole member LLC and I want to use my social security number as a pass-through. I apologize about the dogs, you guys. Almost gone through a bag of treats here. If you can't see me off camera, just handing them treats. If a sole member of an LLC wants to use their personal social security number as what we call a pass-through, they can do that. If you're the original settler of a trust and you want to use that social security number as a pass-through, you can do that. But if you're a successor trustee, so like in this example of the Ladybird, if a Ladybird deed is done to a trust, well, clearly the original settlers, you would assume, are no longer with us. So it would be a successor trustee. They can't use the decedent's social security number. They have to have a TIN. So, and it's very quick. You can get one in 5 minutes. It's just a matter of logging on to irs.gov. So again, that is a problem at the closing table. And I think there's a lot of confusion about it. And it comes back around every year when we go to file 1099 reporting for the title company, because we're looking at files that we don't have the right information. And so we're getting better about, we've actually just rolled out a couple of different initiatives, one being the education part, that when we do see that we have these people in title, we're giving you all the tools in the beginning to make sure your seller is in the best position for a smooth closing as far as receiving proceeds and that kind of thing. And then we're also behind the scenes making sure we're taking a look at those 1099s monthly so that we can sooner address issues if we don't have the correct number. Because you can imagine if someone's calling you a week after you sold the property and saying, hey, I need your social security number, or I need you to do this, we're more likely to get it at that point than 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months later when someone's calling you saying, hey, can you give me your social security number? Nobody wants to do that, and who can blame them? So yeah, great question. And Liz, we can send you all of that stuff that you can, take, brand for yourself, send to your girls or whatever. It's really great. 3 little kind of slides that tells you exactly what you need to do, what your seller needs to have prepared when they're selling property out of one of those entities.
I would say that's one of the biggest problems at a closing table, because then everybody's not aware, or they say, if they were aware, they're saying they're not. But I think it's something, anytime it's in a trust, it is important for the agents to, like Christine said, dang, there's a red light, there's a red flag.
Yep.
We need to get some additional information here, because they get there and nobody has it. Then it holds up it holds up funding for everybody. It holds up exchanging of the keys. It holds up their agent's checks. So that's important. And on top of that, sometimes if it's made payable to the trust, they're going to need a bank account. They can't go to their own personal bank account and put that in their bank account. They're going to need to open up a trust account as well. So although title cannot give legal advice, it's something that when agents see that's something you need to tell your buyers. They need to contact an attorney and make sure that it's set up properly.
Yeah.
Because trust attorneys are all different. You have real estate trust attorneys and you have other, not every trust attorney knows that there's how to do it the correct way for real estate, which is unfortunate.
That's a good point. And we do address the bank account issue on each of those forms as well. So we will get those over to you, and it might be beneficial too, just so that, if it closers at a table and trying to explain why, they at least are kind of, armored with the information.
Trust me, nobody wants that loan to fund and close and be buttoned up more than the closer does, because if you close an escrow, it's a big hassle for the closer. So
who's on first?
Exactly.
Yeah, where do I get my money?
Right. Everybody, we want it to close. Nobody wants to hold it up, but you got to follow those rules.
Great point. Thank you.
Awesome.
Any other questions? Yeah. Anybody? Come on, Danica, you got a question? I haven't called anybody out in a while.
You're calling me out. No. Sorry. I love that the dogs are in your background.
I apologize.
Mine's snoring ferociously next to me. So I didn't realize I was not muted at the beginning, but yeah. No, I got so much more out of this. Not that I was doubting anybody, but so much more out of this than I anticipated.
Great.
So yes, fantastic. I might join another one too, just so I can make sure I get everything.
Please do. Like Sarah mentioned at the beginning, there's always a little bit something different in each one. I mean, Christine and I kind of have done these enough that we kind of follow the same recipe in the beginning, but like I said in the very beginning, I think that when we get those questions and we get the kind of dialogue going, that's when we can all kind of, get some additional value out of it.
That's actually my favorite part, is that, the talk at the end where we can just kind of discuss like certain things that each of us have gone through or that are going on in our transactions, and just, get an understanding of it. That's my favorite part. I would do this, a couple hours a day if I could.
I know when you're put on the spot, it's hard to come up with questions sometimes, but if you do have any, you think of them later and you're like, oh my God, I wish I should have asked that. But, reach out to info@titleocity.com to shoot us over an email. That's probably the easiest one to remember, and somebody can answer any question that you have, regardless of what it is. No question is a stupid question. I ask stupid questions every single day. Don't laugh, Amanda and Christine, because yes, I do literally every day, and I've been in the business for 10 years. So
There's no such thing as a stupid question. You don't learn unless you ask.
that's true. That's true. Well, thank you guys so much.
Hi, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Sure.
So how does the fees or the charges are determined? Is it based on the home value or
As far as
like
the
title charges?
so those are not decided by any of us.
Okay.
The owner's policy has a certain amount based on the purchase price, and then the loan policy has a certain amount based on the loan. So
Okay.
I can send you a copy of that rate chart if you would like. It's just
Okay.
nice to have on hand.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, if you can pop your email in the chat box, and I'll make sure to get that to you.
Okay. I'll do that.
Perfect. I'll send that
Thank you.
as soon as I finish all my notes. Are there any other questions, anyone?
The title capture app that you were showing earlier, would that like give an estimate on the closing costs? Is that what that does? So the rates for those are included in that?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And then just one thing to note, I mean, in some purchase agreements, there could be an enhanced policy or a basic policy. There is an option on there to click in between. Ours automatically goes to enhanced. So if that's not something that you usually do or talk about, you know, with your customers then, or with your clients, just make sure that that basic one is clicked, but you can go back, you can edit, you can change the purchase price and get, you know, let's say a 250 versus 300 versus 350 estimate to your client. It's easy to go back and give them those different estimates. So it's really easy to use. I would say go on and play with it. And just familiarize yourself, because I mean, now I can just fly right through it. But when you first do it, you're like, oh, it takes a second, but
Yeah.
play with it.
And Bonnie, you can, once you logged in, you have an account, you can actually brand those for yourself as well. So if you did want to send it out to clients, you could have something that actually has your information on the form as well. It's pretty neat. Yeah.
That is cool. All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Well, you guys.
Thank you guys so much for joining.
Yeah, we'll continue to do these hopefully once a month, but I know everybody's about to go crazy coming up here. There was a statistic from NAR last week that was saying that this week is going to be the biggest listing week of the entire year. So let's get them. Let's go.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. It was our pleasure.
Yep. See you
Thanks,
guys.
everyone. Have a good afternoon.